When I first stepped into the quietest room on earth, I was prepared for the way silence can wrap itself around your mind and show you things you've avoided for years. The door closed behind me with a heavy thud, and instantly the world I knew, full of constant noise, interruptions, and invisible pressure disappeared. Inside that anechoic chamber, there was no echo, no hum, no vibration, not even the faint presence of the world outside. It was pure, absolute silence, the kind of silence that feels unnatural, almost supernatural. At first, it felt like stepping into a void, like floating in space or sinking underwater without sound. My own breathing seemed too loud, too sharp. I could hear my heartbeat pulsing inside my ears, a deep rhythmic thump that grew louder the longer I stayed there. I tried to pray out loud, whispering a quiet "Lord, I'm here," but my voice sounded intrusive, as if speaking broke the rules of that place. So I stopped talking and let myself fall into the stillness, thinking silence would calm me. I had no idea it would confront me. Every thought I had ignored, every emotion I had buried, every unanswered question in my spirit suddenly rose to the surface. Silence doesn't comfort you at first. It exposes you, and in those first few minutes, I realized how loud my soul had been without me noticing. It was strange, my own thoughts, so familiar, suddenly felt foreign. I could feel tension in my chest, like something inside me was bracing for a revelation I wasn't ready for. But even in the midst of that rising discomfort, there was a pull, a kind of subtle tug toward surrender, as if God himself was clearing space inside me to speak a truth I had been too noisy to hear. Around the 10-minute mark, something shifted in a way I still struggle to explain. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. It was more like a vibration, a low hum, deep inside my chest, as if my heart had found a frequency only silence could reveal. My breathing slowed without my permission. My shoulders relaxed. My mind sharpened to a level of focus I hadn't felt in years. It was like someone had reached inside and turned down the volume of everything except the present moment. And then came the impression, gentle, unmistakable, not audible but undeniably real. Be still. I've been waiting for you. My eyes filled instantly with tears. It hit me that God hadn't been silent. I had been loud, too loud to hear, too distracted to notice, too busy to receive. In the middle of that strange, almost holy silence, I felt a presence not heavy or frightening, but intimate, like being seen completely and loved completely at the same time. It was overwhelming in the most peaceful way. As the silence deepened, something inside me began to unravel. Regrets I tried to forget surfaced. Wounds I never addressed pulsed like open doors. Fears I pretended didn't exist whispered their names. I realized that noise had been my escape for years. The world's chaos was a disguise I wore to avoid dealing with everything underneath. But in that silent chamber, I had nowhere to hide. And it was there, in that vulnerability, that I felt God wasn't exposing me to shame me, but to heal me. The silence was becoming a mirror, reflecting not just what was wrong, but what still could be restored. I felt the urge to run, to open the door and escape the intensity. Instead, I stayed, and that decision changed everything that came next. At around the 20-minute mark, something physical happened, something the engineers later told me shouldn't happen in a silent room. I started hearing what felt like whispers, not from outside, not in the air, but somewhere between my thoughts. It wasn't language, not words, more like a movement of meaning, a spiritual current swirling inside me. For a moment, I questioned my sanity, but the impression was too clear to dismiss. You've filled your life with noise you call normal, but it's been keeping you from me. That sentence broke me in the quietest way. Tears streamed down my face as if years of tension were dissolving all at once. I suddenly saw how often I prayed while distracted, listened while impatient, sought answers while drowning in my own noise. Silence wasn't empty. It was sacred ground I had avoided. But the deeper I stayed in it, the more I felt layers of stress peeling away from my mind like old wallpaper. My thoughts stopped competing. My breathing softened into a natural rhythm. My anxieties loosened their grip. I remembered things God told me in the past, things I dismissed because they didn't fit my timeline or expectations. I saw clearly the decisions I had been delaying, the habits I refused to break, the prayers I had prayed without expectation. In that silence, it was as if God turned on a spiritual spotlight and illuminated the exact parts of my life I had been afraid to confront. Yet instead of feeling judged, I felt guided. Instead of fear, I felt direction. Instead of confusion, I felt clarity. It was like silence had become a teacher, revealing answers I didn't even know I was asking for. And deeper still, I felt something else, a peace, so profound it almost frightened me. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was foreign. I wasn't used to peace. I was used to pressure. I was used to rushing. I was used to filling every second with noise because silence had always felt like vulnerability. But in that moment, I realized silence wasn't my enemy. It was a bridge I had never crossed. By the time I reached the 50-minute point, the silence no longer felt like silence at all. It felt like clarity, like revelation. like a conversation happening without sound. I wasn't praying anymore. I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't trying to control the moment. I was simply present, fully, deeply present. And in that stillness, I felt the clearest impression of all. This is why the enemy keeps you busy, because stillness is where I restore you. I sat there, breathing slowly, letting that truth settle into the spaces inside me that had been fragments for so long. I thought about how many prayers I had prayed in haste, how many moments I rushed past, how many signs I missed because I never slowed down enough to feel God's nudge. The silence taught me that God doesn't always shout, sometimes He waits. And when I finally opened the door and stepped back into the world, everything felt deafening. Cars, conversations, footsteps, even the wind felt loud. But I carried something new inside me, an awareness that silence is not empty. It is full of God if you allow it to be. That room showed me something I wish I had learned years ago. Noise keeps you distracted, but silence brings you face to face with the one who has been speaking to you the whole time. If there's one thing I took from that chamber, it's this. You don't need an anechoic room to encounter God. You just need 10 minutes of real silence. 10 minutes where the world stops spinning long enough for your spirit to breathe again. And if you give Him those minutes, I promise you He will meet you in the stillness every single time.